And one of them would be this extremist assimilation that you talk about. Again, the left will use anything and support any group of people if they think it will destroy their two greatest enemies. And you make this point over and over again. The two greatest enemies to them, to the left, are Christianity and freedom. You go into some real explanation about who is behind this agenda as it concerns even Islamic terror. And you bring out the fact that Islamic terror is under the direction of Marxists, not Islamists. Please expand on this. This is fascinating.
Well, it makes sense with my studying the Marxist mind for the last 7-8 years now. I mean, they're masters of using people. I mean, Lenin himself said, seize every, even the smallest opportunity of gaining a mass ally, even though this ally be temporary, vacillating, unstable, unreliable, and conditional. Those who do not understand this fail to understand even a grain of Marxism. Marxism is about using people, all people. You become all things to all people. And I think it's clear, if you study terrorism, world terrorism in the 20th century, you'll be shocked of one thing when you go start studying it. There's no mention of Islamic terrorism until the late 50s and early 60s. All terrorism in the 10s, 20s, 30s, and 40s, 50s was openly communist terrorism. Of course, they don't blow themselves up because they're atheists. They want to live. But they were blowing up buildings and train stations and police stations all over the world, causing chaos in different countries, so then they could then use the chaos to rise to power and take control of different countries, at which they did over and over again through the 20th century. Well, they realized that Islam, an ideology very much like their own, has the same goal of world domination. And so they realized, wait a minute, and these people actually like killing themselves for the cause.
Right.
And so it's a dream come true for the Marxist mind, because they don't want to die. They're atheists. This is all they have. And so if they can get other people to believe God's happy with this or whatever, and they'll blow themselves up for the cause. They love that. So in the 1930s, it's crystal clear they were penetrating all the seminaries and divinity schools in America to get a hold of the Christian church, but they were likewise doing the same thing over in the Middle East, which is much closer to Russia, of course. And so as you dig in and study this, you see the training, the funding, the guns, all through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s until today. It's all from the Soviet Union and Red China. It still is today. That's what's going on. People seem to think it's this separate entity all by itself, and every now and then, Russia will have a terrorist attack to make it look like it's legit. But what was so neat is a few years ago, Alexander Litvinenko, who was a Russian KGB agent, so he obviously knew what was going on in Russia, when he defected to the West, he told us, he said the terrorist attacks that had been done against Russia, he goes, we did them ourselves, the KGB, because we were wanting people to think we were opposed to radical Islam because we're really the hand that controls it. The movement, the anti-Americanism of it, the anti-Israel impact of it, that is coming from them, and they're helping stir up the pot to cause the chaos and cause the trouble in these countries. I mean, look what's happened in the Middle East even. They've gotten all very friendly, Marxist-type, Russian-friendly people in power of all those countries that used to be pro-Western people. But Obama and the State Department pressed those people out of there. They weren't perfect, and so the Marxists were happy to put in people that Russia and Putin are very happy with over there. Again, as you dig in, it's like, oh my goodness, they did the same thing to them that they're doing to us. They're using these people to get control, and they've never found a better tool ever in their history.
And you bring out the fact that the number one man in Al-Qaeda was trained by the KGB. I'm well aware of the fact that Mahmoud Abbas, head of the Palestinian Authority, was trained by the KGB.
Yeah, the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, which most people in America definitely remember that. If you were alive in the 70s and 80s, you remember that. We know now that that wasn't like a Islamic group, the Marxists and Soviets infiltrated and took over. They started that. The KGB themselves started the PLO. They act like they were Islamic people. They were down there, and they started. And we know that from all the KGB files that have been released now. That was actually a Soviet-run organization from the beginning. It wasn't captured and taken over. So, no, they've been in this for a long time because they have a goal of world communism, and they will not stop until that is complete. And they love the fact that most of us, even some that might be listening to me, think, what is this guy talking about? out that doesn't even exist anymore. They love that. Mm-hmm. They have been the greatest masters of deceit in the history of the world because they have convinced their opposition they don't even exist anymore.
And Curtis, I'm sure somebody out there listening right now is wondering about, what about Afghanistan, the Mujahideen, and the battle that they had supposedly with Russia? Where did the Mujahideen fit into this? They must have just been radical Islam that wasn't going to go along with the rest of the plan. But I want you to speak to that if you would.
Oh, it's a key issue. A good friend of mine that's in the movie, Trevor Loudon, one of his friends infiltrated the New Zealand Communist Party back in the 80s and was sent to Moscow to train at Lenin's Institute of Higher Learning, where they have 6,000 students at a time, on some of them on 7-year courses. And so you get a real glimpse of what's going on. This is in the early 80s, so the Soviet Union's still around. And this is in the middle of the Afghan war and some of those things. And he was there to hear this. And people were coming saying, why are you allowing this little 2-bit tribal country to take on the Soviet Union? You can't beat them. And he said the strategist sat down with him and said, listen, America had Vietnam. It bloodied their nose. We are doing this intentionally. We have gone into Afghanistan to lose. So the whole world will be saying, why would you worry about the Soviet Union? They couldn't even beat Afghanistan. They must not be the power we thought they were. It was all part of the strategy. This he heard with his own ears at the school that he had infiltrated and took notes on it and then conveyed it to us. And it's amazing. So even Afghanistan was a purposeful piece in the puzzle of making the world think, well, good night. I guess the Soviet Union's not some big superpower. And it helped us then slowly later start disarming and start doing things and stuff. So anyway, so that's another point of deception that most people have a completely different view of. They think, oh, Afghanistan and Russia were fighting. No, they went down there and stirred things up intentionally, but never tried to win it. They could have wiped them out in one day if they wanted to. They would have used nuclear weapons and the game would have been over. But that wasn't the point of it. It was to convince us they are not a threat, and we should help them out and allow the transition, which was starting to take place then. Later in the mid-'80s, Gorbachev started to act like, we're all friends now, and we just need some help with some technology and some money and to feed our people, and we won't be mean anymore if you just help us out. And, of course, since then, we have given them hundreds of billions of dollars, all the latest technology for the last 20 years now, and they have been paid very well for acting like they went away.
You're listening to Understanding the Times Radio. I am Jan Markell, and Eric Barger's in studio with me as my co-host. We're talking to Curtis Bowers, who's come out with an updated version of Agenda 2, Masters of Deceit. We carry it. olivetreeviews.org, views as in viewpoint. And you can give us a call as well, or get onto our various newsletters, e-newsletter, print newsletter, so forth, and get a hold of this absolutely must-see 80-minute video. And Curtis Bowers, you say the left says they care about Muslims, blacks, the poor, women, environment, and children, but they could care less. They only care about totalitarianism in transforming America. And I think that is so profound, particularly in this political season when everybody, particularly on the left, is talking about the rights of Muslims, women, black, the poor, etc. You feel they could care less, and I would agree.
Well, it's clear. You look at the Great Society programs of the 60s, and you look at Lyndon Johnson, and you look at the warnings he was given that will destroy the black families in America if you institute these Great Society programs. But, of course, they did anyway because they knew they would get the votes of that bloc. And you look now, even if that was well-meaning, if you believe, oh, no, I think they really were trying to help them, well, then you look and you go, well, yeah, okay, we've done it for over 50 years now, and it has destroyed the black families in America. Back then when it started, there was 70% of intact mother, father, child homes. Today, it's 70% single mothers leading those families in utter poverty, and it didn't help them at all. But we keep doing the same thing. So it shows, wait a minute, if you would learn after a year or two, hey, this isn't helping these people. We want to help them. So you look at thing after thing, and you see that's the case. But to me, they were exposed more than they ever have been with Islam. Islam, if you want to call it a religion, it's not. It's a totalitarian ideology that has a little religion mixed in. But look at Islam. It's fine for a husband to beat his wife. Women have no rights at all. Homosexuals are stoned to death. All the different things, and yet the left loves it. And as I looked at it, I go, wait a minute, this is exposing them, that they really don't care about the homosexuals. You wouldn't be helping or promoting a group in America that thinks they should be all stoned to death. If you're really for women, the feminist movement, are you going to allow people to come to your country that are beating their wives, and that's fine? That's not against the rules or anything? And on. You look through all the different elements of Islam, the whole Sharia law and all the things that are implemented in that, it's all against everything that they say that they're for. I saw that. I said, wow, they have exposed themselves here, because any thinking person will say, why would they be so pro-Islam when we just see the torture and the slavery these women are under? Anyway, it's all smoke and mirrors for power and control. But unfortunately, there have been many, many naive people that have bought into them because they're masters of packaging the language where it really does sound good.